probably do a little bit taller because I feel like it's hiding your face.
Oh, okay.
Kind
Yeah,
of
let
high.
me know.
Okay, perfect. Okay, we're live. Hi, David. Welcome to Venture with Grace today.
Hey, Grace, how you doing?
I would give you like a quick birthday shout out. This weekend was David's birthday. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Yeah,
Um,
it was a good birthday, and I went to my 5-year reunion at the Kennedy School. So good weekend.
Amazing. Okay, so why don't we start with a little bit of your background? What like basically your accomplishment before you enter venture, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so I mean, I'll start off. I never knew what venture capital was growing up. I remember one time when I was young. My friend Rolf and I went trick or treating and went to a house where we just went to a big house and knocked on the door and said, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" And they said venture capital. And we like looked at each other and we're like, "What the hell is venture capital?" But yeah, I think my journey started in college. I went to Silicon Valley to intern at Google in the Bold program. And I think it just opened my world to the world of technology and how you can help people. After school, I ended up doing a Fulbright in Mexico City, working for Endeavor, which is a global accelerator for high impact entrepreneurs. And the idea is, can we generate economic growth for a country through entrepreneurship, which is like something I really believe in. And that got me the ability to work with early stage founders who were all scaling their companies, raising venture funding, expanding market, et cetera. And I loved it. My job was to write the diligence memos and then go with the founders to their meetings. So I got to learn a lot. And then after that, I stayed in Mexico and I noticed that there was a Mexico is just so talented in terms of entrepreneurship, but there was a lack of access to capital. So I joined one of the Endeavor mentors and helped them run a pre-seed company, a pre-seed startup. And my job there, because we had made a lot of the investments, was actually just to go and work with the founders. Work 2 to 3 days in their office, and I got to work directly with them. One of them was a big ed tech platform in Mexico, actually the biggest at the time, Cursame. And I just love the energy and the hustle and how you were building as you went. So then fast forward, I went to school. Got my MBA at Harvard Business School and got a MPP at the Kennedy School. And when I was graduating, I just thought, well, what was like the most exciting, most fulfilling thing I did in my career? And it was working with the founders. And so after school, one of my favorite classes was scaling tech ventures. And so I joined two venture-backed companies. One of them was a real estate tech company growing from, I would say, like Series B pre-IPO. We had some SPAC. We went on a SPAC roadshow, so got really close to being an exit. And then I joined a future work startup by a Kennedy School alum, Desmond, focused on bringing more software to hourly workers and to restaurants and retail and hotels that employ hourly workers. So it was SMB bringing software, to the deskless workforce.
Mm. Okay, so I want to start with like let's talk about like, ad tech because I feel like we have a lot of investors who are talking about like the future of workspace, which is a very popular space we'll get into. But I feel like not many investors are focusing on the ad tech space. I wonder to start off the show, I would love to chat about like how does the money flow in the industry. So I've seen a lot of companies that are focusing on subscription model or like freemium models or like or they could get from like the public sector investments or grants or things or like they have corporate partnerships. I wonder to start with this topic, why don't we talk about what exactly is ad tech and then how does the money flow in the industry. um yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, education technology, any technology that touches the world of education. I think usually when people say ed tech, they think of the buyer as a educational institution, whether it's like a K through 12 buyer or a university. But that's how people, I think, broad definition of ed tech. Now, there is also continuous learning, and ed on the corporate side, right? Corporations need upskilling, they need skills development to be competitive. So that's probably it. I would say, how does the money flow? Well, that's a really good question. In terms of the ed tech side or the future work side, right? One of the things we're looking for, right, I think, as investors is, does this company have the potential to be, a hugely successful business in a period of a decade? And to get even more granular, right, we try to look for these companies that are going to be valued at $1 billion in a decade, which is a really hard thing to do. I mean, it's like almost like climbing Mount Everest, right? It's so difficult
Mhm.
to be able to achieve so much in so little. But and then we work our way backwards, right? Well, how are you
Mhm.
valued as $1 billion company, right? If you're a software company having $100 million in ARR, with good gross margins, with good net retention revenue, can signify that you can be valued in the public markets at a $1 billion plus valuation. And then so now we work our way back even more and we say, okay, in 2022, 2023, 2024, what are the companies that are being started today that have the potential to be $100 million AR companies by 2030, 2032, right? It's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. And then that's the question we're answering. So now let me reconnect that back to the ed tech world. In the ed tech world, you can go through, where's the money coming from? It could come through K through 12, right? That's almost, I would think of that like an enterprise type of customer. It could come through higher education. I would also think of that as an enterprise customer. Or it could come through consumers, right? Going directly to learners, going directly to teachers. Right now, an area that our team is really excited about is the applications of AI to empower teachers.
Mhm.
Um, One of our companies, for example, Teachy, is building a whole set of AI tools for teachers, right, that help them be more productive, more efficient. Teachers just do so much when they're in the classroom with students, and then they go home and then they got to work like 5, 10 more hours, right? So it makes sense that technology can come here and help the teachers. And so that a solution like that has been exploding, not only Teachy, but at all the other comparables in their market. They're getting up rounds. One went to Series A recently, and so I think it's a good sign that technology through the consumer model can grow in this time.
I wonder, so I wanted to touch up on the last point you mentioned a little bit. I wonder, let's say for the Teachy app or like any sort of like teaching related tools. I feel like this morning I was watching the news update about like the Google's innovation in the AI space.
Yeah,
I feel like I could technically using like a generic AI tools like Gemini or like ChatGPT to accomplish like I would say like 50 to 80% of the
yeah,
task of like teaching myself in a subject. Although we before we hop on this conversation, we're chatting about the basically you leveraging AI to educate yourself. Maybe there is a more superficialness to it, but I wonder when it comes to like having a tool in the teaching arena, how much differentiation is there between, like before, like I guess like if because I feel like currently the AI technology is moving really fast in like big tech. So a lot of the newest innovation are coming out of big tech. My biggest like fear is like for startups is like, you are making something maybe like 20% better than the existing tool that big tech is making. And big tech has like more resources and power
yeah,
to kind of like
yeah,
leveraging that to improve the AI side of things. What
yeah.
would be that like fundamental advantages for startups to actually innovate in the space? My second group of thoughts is like on the buying side, like who is buying.
Hmm.
Since like there is if the individual consumer is buying, we have seen a certain educational tool, they are losing market value, and like uh basically like I feel like consumer are having less intention to buy AI related things because now AI is becoming some sort of like the Google of the world. So basically, it's kind of
Yeah,
like a table stake for people to use
absolutely.
it, and then like it's like kind of $20 a month, and or you can even get it for free from like a lot of these freemium model. So I
Yeah.
wonder, how do you think about the buying side to reach if that company would reach like $100 million ARR at
Yeah,
some.
no, I love this. I love this. And well, two quick points. The first one is back to the $100 million AR question, right? That's where we want to be in 10 period in a decade from now, right? And that could be very different than what do we need to go and do today, right? If you're a pre-seed company, you should be a long-term thinker, but you should also be looking at the buying environment, looking around and seeing what is needed today. That's the first point. The second point is I still, our team still believes we're in like the infancy of AI, right? Like they say that with every new technological wave, it takes like one, now it's not the first wave of companies that come out, but it's like the third, wave of companies that end up really picking steam, especially startups. So 2023, we saw so many companies. Like our team reviewed over 1,000 deals, and a lot of them didn't have defensibility. They were more leveraging LLMs to, like LLMs plus some good
Mhm,
UI. And so, but jump to 2024, we're seeing like more sophistication product, in product roadmaps,
mhm.
in how to challenge the incumbent. But I think 2025 and 2026 and maybe even today, these new generation companies are going to emerge. A big question that we're grappling with is like, there's no doubt that there's immense value creation happening, right, from technology. The question is, who's going to capture that value, right? Right now, it seems like incumbents are really capturing a lot of value, right? I mean, I think Microsoft is leading in terms of enterprise AI and how much they can charge. Google and all of these big players are beginning to really embed large language models into their products and get customers using it and customers paying. But then you have the young startups who have a few things against them, right? First, less proprietary data than the bigger companies, less customers. And then back to your question, Grace, on follow the money. Well, the enterprise mid-market buyers are sometimes a little bit hesitant to work with the younger startups, right? Especially because they have to think about things like privacy, is this company going to be around, and things like that. So it's tough, but that's why we love the pre-seed, right? Because it's the opportunity to help companies define these things and help them build a strong foundation to challenge the incumbent.
I guess what do you see in that company that like will give you the like confidence to
Yeah.
invest in them to I feel like for earlier stage in pre-seed or seed, essentially the business model is like, would this particular company return the whole fund at one point? So
Mhm.
how did you like, I guess like how do you what would be like your diligence process look like to evaluate this? Because I technically feel like the pre-seed and seed is, most people say it's based on the market and the people, um and I feel like it's very vague in general. What
Yeah. Okay. If
exactly
I'm
in the
big with
people or the
anything, I want
market?
you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, look, honestly, like one of my favorite things about venture is actually diligence, as nerdy as it sounds, because you're like trying to solve this puzzle, right? With the original question, can this be $1 billion company in a decade? And so you work your way back. Whenever I review decks, whenever I talk to founders, whenever we meet with founders, I would say there's a few things we're looking for. Number one, especially in the pre-seed, seed stage, right? When you don't have a lot of data on revenue, on churn, on net revenue retention, you don't have these things to evaluate. A lot of it is the team, right? And so we're looking for like two qualities, right? Can this team build and can this team sell, right? So on the building side, we're looking for, it could be like a much more of like a CTO technical, could be more of like a product person, but we're looking for like, can they build an amazing product, right? Do they have like the finesse? Do they have the experience? Do they have the track record of building good products, right? And so we look at what they've done in the past. We look at where they started and where they're at now, and we look at all these things for how well they can build. And then on the second part, can they sell? Interesting enough, I think the selling part is an area where we see like a big need, um, because a lot of founders are just love creating products, and that's why you get into it, right? Like going back to when I worked for operators, that was the funnest part. But it's like the ability to sell is really important because you have to sell to customers, you have to convince them, you have to sell to investors so you can raise, capital, and you have to sell to people to take a risk on you, to join your team, to recruit an A plus team. So those are the two kind of big qualities we look for from a team perspective. And I'm happy to pause there or go into like other areas we look at.
I wanted to go back to the $100 million ARR question. So, like, what would they be building? And then, like, how would you think about, um, because I feel like, can people sell? Like, I feel like from my end, when I'm like observing the journey of some of my friends' startups, like some people just cannot sell at the beginning. Like I mean, I would not like bet my money on them, but
Yeah,
they eventually become like they pick up some skill really fast, and like or like their team may pick up the skill really fast. So I feel like it's really hard to see if a company would like having a significant return. I wonder, what would you say are, I guess, like the benchmark that you would use to judge if a person can sell? Of course, like if you hear their pitch, if their pitch is like cohesive and like actually making sense to you, obviously that's a really good sign. But what kind of diligence would you do to make sure that, like, because going
they
back
can
to,
sell
since
it.
you
Yeah,
mentioned, like, I think selling like something to $100 million ARR is not like necessarily like a one person game. And at
yeah.
the very beginning, how would you make like the basically push the trigger to be like, oh, we will actually back X instead of Y?
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question. I think one just normal, very human way is it's just a lot of times it's how you feel when you can connect with that person, right? They're selling you their vision, they're selling you their product, they're selling you what they can achieve, and then you kind of get a sense of, can this person sell, right? But let me just say, like, I don't think selling is like you're born with it or you're not, right? In fact, I think some of the more talented founders I've met are folks that have a good product or technical background and then become really good sellers because they can get into the details, they love the product, and then their selling is just how they connect with customers or investors or new employees, right? So one of them is just like a big feel and venture. It was one of my takeaways after like 1 year. It's like it is a huge people business, right?
Mhm.
More than anything, especially in the earlier stages. But the second part, I mean, just it's as simple as just show me what you've done, right? So we going through someone's LinkedIn or someone's resume and just seeing like, hey, at any point in their career did they have to sell, right? And it doesn't mean that you're like an account executive or like a sales development rep or you worked in sales, but it's like, have you had to sell at any point of your career and how have you done that? And then other ways, you can talk to customers, and ask them, hey, when X person was pitching, what did you think they did amazing at? Where do you think you would coach them? So you're just trying to get you're trying to get a lot of various data points that overall feed an impression of, can this person sell, right? Because you're trying to sell to 100 million ARR, and it's going to be a tough road.
Um, I wonder, when it comes to like studying an industry, let's talk about like becoming an expert in a particular industry.
Yeah,
Um, like we chat about this before, and but I wanted to go back on, like, for example, if you want to establish thought leadership in a particular industry, what would be your like day-to-day game plan. Let's say if you have a month to trying to find out, like, let's say like you want to find one deal that could return the whole fund, what would be your thought process on like from zero knowledge to this industry? Let's use like quantum computing as an example. Let's say you don't know anything about an industry. Hi Daniel, I wanted to say hi to the audience. So let's say if you like want to sell like a quantum computing, like if you want to like invest in a quantum computing space today, you know absolutely nothing. And what would be your 30-day journey to actually find that one deal that will return your whole fund?
Dang, Grace, with the good questions.
Sorry.
30-day journey. Well, okay. 30-day journey. I think, and we were talking about it right before we jumped on, but the first thing is just reading almost anything you can get your hands on at the beginning, right? So literally I would open up Google or, whatever future search engine exist, and I would just put quantum computing, right? So I would put quantum computing, and then you get hundreds of results, right? I think here is being thoughtful about the sources, right? Who is producing this research? Does this person have credibility, experience, right? So I would really care about that, right? So in terms of quantum computing, I would want to hear from scientists. I'd want to hear from um, folks that have built quantum computing companies. I just, in this stage, I wouldn't be like very picky. I would just want to read as much high quality thoughts as I can.
Mhm.
Then once you start kind of like gelling and taking notes, then, I think your mind starts sort of creating little buckets or like, and you're still solving the question, right? If it's quantum computing in terms of investing, how is quantum computing creating massive value for society, and who can capture that value, right? So that's the guiding question. And then as I'm learning, right, I'm sort of putting things into little buckets and I'm trying to get the whole picture, right? I'm trying to develop a thesis of, hey, what are two, three, four areas that I'm really excited about? And then once I feel like, okay, I'm like not a complete dummy on this, obviously have so much to learn still, then I start talking to people, and I start talking to experts and just, like now I know what questions to ask, even if I don't have the answers, but I can learn from them, right? And I think here's where active listening is like a huge edge. Here's where connecting well with people helps a lot, right? Because you're able to sort of fill in the gaps of what you weren't able to learn from your own personal research. So yeah, I mean, then I would have like, okay, a good idea, and then, or I've done my independent research, I've connected with experts and really thoughtful people in this area, and then the people that know the most are the people building in on the ground, right? So this is where then I want to know who are the best founders, who are the best operators who are building in this space, and how can I connect with them, right? How can I connect with them and learn and ask questions and hear their vision and hear their product roadmap and how they think this could be a big financial opportunity and everything, right? Anything you would want to know. So then, yeah, that would be my starting spot. I don't know if I could 30 days. I don't know. I would have to ask the team to give me some time off from all the sourcing and inbounding, but that's how I would approach it.
I wonder, okay, so I wonder how would you understand the sales cycle in the ecosystem? Because I feel like, for example, let's say using quantum computing as an example,
Yeah,
um, I think right now the product side of things is very vague. I'm not exactly sure if they're going to sell it to the government, or are we all going to use like quantum computing every day in our
yeah,
everyday life in the next 10 years? Like, because of, let's say, we're using like a really abstract concept, um, that's like not a product yet. How would you understand the sales cycle? Since eventually, if you want to achieve like $100 million ARR, you have to be able to see this thing can productize, and also people would actually having the purchasing power to like actually buy them,
yeah,
understand the ecosystem. It's similar to like the current AI space. Like, there's a lot of things that are building in the space, but like, for I feel like for the generational product, beside the ChatGPT era, or like, these like fundamental models, like foundational models, like there's no like I feel like in the next generation wave of AI, there will be something new that's gonna come out. Um, I wonder, how do you understand the sales cycle? Because
Yeah.
I feel like right now, I don't know about your diligence process, but my diligence process would be like, okay, talking to the customer, would you, let's say they're selling to a restaurant, I will ask
Mhm.
the restaurant owner, would you buy this if this exists, right? Like, or like,
Yeah.
how much would you pay? Um, like, what's your thought on XYZ? But if the buyer market doesn't exist yet, like, how would you kind of like diligence if something is like productizable and able to actually return the money?
Yeah. Okay. This is great. I've seen this both from the investor side and the operator side. On the investor side, well, you're familiar with you segment customers into enterprise, mid-market, and SMBs, right? Enterprise are huge companies, think like Fortune 100, Fortune
Mhm,
500, long sales cycles, like
mhm,
6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 months, but huge contracts, sometimes yearly or multi-year.
mhm,
And so that world, right? And I've sold to that world. So I remember that world and all how, the motion that you have to build to
mhm,
succeed there. Then there's mid-market that is a little bit like not as long, still pretty big. This is where a lot of the bulk of the companies are in the mid-market and the SMBs. And then the SMBs are smaller. There's so many more of them. They sometimes don't have access to all these tools, right? So you kind of have a general idea for that's how I would start, kind of bucketing them. And then let's just say we're thinking about like sales or marketing SaaS or like customer success SaaS or product management software, right? Then I start to understand like what are enterprise or mid market or SMBs demanding from like their sales tools, right? What do they need? What an enterprise needs, what a Fortune 500 company needs is very different than what a SMB needs, but it's really understanding buying needs. And so like
mhm,
something I read a lot is Gartner, or these reports where they're like really talking to the buyers and the decision makers, right? Like, what are CEOs saying? What are CFOs saying? Who in the boardroom has influence? Who in the boardroom is leading? Sorry, not boardroom, executive team, like C-suite, is leading purchasing, and what are their priorities, right? Because and back to the 100 million ARR question, you're trying to understand how do you get to $100 million ARR in a decade? And then you're trying to see today, what are the needs of today, right? Whether it's enterprise or mid-market or SMBs. And then the most talented founders, and I don't run into a lot of founders that think like this, start with already the product roadmap, right? To get to $100 million in ARR, what are the 3, 4 products that I can over time launch, right? That can help me get there, right? And obviously, you start with an initial product, might not be your best product, but it's solving like a huge, huge need. It allows you to build a relationship with the customer. It gives you the opportunity to delight them and to be able to say, hey, well, we built this second product. Would you like to try it? And if you're doing a good job, they're going to be like, hell yeah, And so it's like understanding today what they need, but understanding also tomorrow what they may need.
um let's going back to the quantum computing example. Let's say our 1 month project is to invest in a unicorn. So we spend 1 week of educate ourselves on Google,
Mhm.
trying to figure out what is quantum computing,
Yeah.
what is the product, who is in the current market. I assume that's what we're gonna do. Like, what else do we need to figure out in the week one? If
All right, we're trying to be a unicorn, and we're trying to find the unicorn.
we're trying to find the unicorn in day 30, and then now
Okay.
let's say, like, bucket into 4 weeks. Week 1 is research, week 2 is talking to experts, week 3 is meeting founder, week 4 is, I guess, decision making week.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk
Yes,
about,
I
like,
like that.
each week, what is our, I guess, like, KPI for ourselves to move
Oh
on
yeah.
to the week after.
Okay, let's start with each week. Let's
I think,
yeah,
by
week
the way,
one research.
any person who's trying to get into a VC should probably just listen to this part at this point. But anyway, keep going.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, breaking heart. it's a separate topic, but VC is like super hard to break into. So if I can ever help, please reach out. But okay, week one. So I would say, all right, Grace, like you read 50 to 100 articles, and I'll read 50 to 100 articles, and you come up with like your big points, and I'll come up with my big points. We did this last summer with one of our KPOR fellows, Yasmin, where we were going very in depth with future work and trying to form a thesis or refine a
What
thesis.
is K for, fellow?
KPOR is an incredible organization that has both an impact investing arm and then like a venture arm, like a foundation and a venture arm. And they invest in, I'd call it like more patient capital. Like they're looking for organizations that like can scale and be big companies, but maybe not like VC where it's like, no, or, there's so much
Mhm.
pressure on the time. And then they really care about gap closing.
Mm.
And how do we close the gap in terms of how do we enable more people to launch companies and grow companies regardless of their background, right? So we really value them, and we had a fellow last summer from there that we did this. So it was like week
Mhm.
one. She read. She was an MBA. She read like 40, 50 articles. I read 50 articles, and then we had like a little thesis, and then so that'd be week one. Week
Oh,
two.
question for on that. So, what are we looking for in these like thesis articles? And then like for the 40 or 50 article, let's get into details like on like where would you find them? Like so is that on Google Scholar, or is this like on, let's say, like a Harvard Business like review portal, or like
Yeah.
what exactly are the article that you're feeding yourself?
Yeah. Okay. Let's start. Okay. So top. Okay. If I were to share a Google Doc, right, I would put at the
Mhm.
top goal: find $100 million ARR company with high gross margins, um, ability to continue growing out, like just a company that could be $1 billion company, right?
Mhm.
And then work your way backwards, right? So then it's like, assuming we're like looking for companies in pre-seed now, the question is, right, like this year, right, like 20 or in the last, take 1 year past 1 year forward, what are the companies being started in this space? Then I would start with your guiding question, which was like kind of follow the money. Where are where is value creation being like happening, right? Where's value creation in quantum computing happening? And who is paying for that, right? Because if people are paying, right, it signifies that they really value what you're creating. And so I would start off, right, I would put like my MBA MPP hat, right, and I'd be like private sector, public sector. Private sector, who are all the buyers, right? Who is investing in quantum computing? How much are they investing? Why are they investing? On the public side, right, same questions. Is the federal government, the state, local? Like, where's follow the money, right? So once we have like an idea of the purchasing, then I think we start connecting with founders, or start connecting with builders in the space, right? And from week one, we have like all of like our thoughts, right? Independent research. Ideally, you and I would then like talk and be like, what do you think? What do I think? And go back and forth. Because there's going to be like a lot of things that you got, Grace, that I didn't see at all. And maybe something I saw that, you didn't see, right? So it's like that process of collaboration that can help us refine a thesis. Then, and part of that thesis has to be like answering that question, right? Because that's the name of the game, right? And then we would go out and talk to people, right? Founders and experts, and just learn. And so let's just say, wow, okay, so we talked to 30 founders, and like 10, 20 people in the public sector side, right? Or that know quantum computing on the public side. Then it would be like figuring out what's the product, right? Like what are they paying for? What are they paying for? And then coming up with a list of 50, 100 founders that are in the space and setting up meetings and talking to them and trying to see we know there's going to be a unicorn potential company in this neighborhood. Who do we believe is the founding team, the product, the strategy that is going to be able to bring that to market? Yeah, that's honestly the fun part. Um, yeah,
I wonder when you're reaching out to the founders, let's say if at this point if you're working at a VC firm, I feel like okay, so this is like this question probably apply to a lot of people. That's not necessarily like, let's say I feel like if you are working at a recognizable name firm, it's easier for you to get deal flow or like getting people to chat with you.
yeah,
But if you are like a newbie at a firm or like in general you don't have the brand recognition, how would you approach the process to reaching out to founders in general? Because I think like not necessarily every founder wants to chat with everyone. So some founders are more open minded. They're like open to educate the investor market. But on the other hand, if especially if it's a new thing, and then the people is more towards the technical end, like people may not want to socialize with investors or people in general. Uh, like how would you kind of like just go out to outreach in a differentiated way so that people take the meeting?
yeah. It's a great question. I mean, that's. Are you? And this is assuming you're already in venture.
So let's think you are emerging manager or you are a person working operation at a startup or a student in general.
Yeah,
So like people who are in venture but like not necessarily like with let's say like a branded firm.
yeah. Okay, so how would I source?
How
Yeah,
would you kind of like have the initial meeting with a team? Let's say if you have, let's say, oh yeah, sure. How do you source? So I think like there's two part of the question. One is like coming up with a list of like the people that you need to chat with, right? So we're talking about the research of like this 30 founder, like 10, 20 people in the public sector. Let's say you identify them on LinkedIn. You're like, okay, so let's say X founder just raised like 5 million from
mhm.
X firm, and like you identify that's like a founder who is building in this space or adjacent space, and then there's like I guess like who would be on your list of people that you're trying to meet, and like how what would be your way to reaching out to them if you don't work in venture or if you don't have like a significant track record to
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
demonstrate without like being like uh
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Like, Sergio, our founding partner, like, has been an investor for 15 years and
mhm.
just gets really high quality deal flow, right, from all the networks he's built. So I mean, I would break it down into two, right? Inbound and outbound. Outbound is when you're looking for the companies, like the investor is reaching out to the founder and trying to set up a meeting. Inbound is just when the founder reaches out to you and wants to set up a meeting. So on the
Oh,
outbound,
okay. Sorry. Like we should probably also address like how do you find the quality deal in inbounds? So I feel like
yeah,
uh nowadays like because of like I feel like I've got a lot of the inbound messages, but like it's really hard to figure out like because everyone's sending a deck. So like I have to go through the deck to be like, okay, so this is qualified, not qualified, or
yeah,
so I feel like I wonder if there's like a system that you guys use to like kind of like funnel the deal flow coming in to quickly figure out who are like the the people that you actually want to spend time with.
yeah. I mean, definitely. You need a system. Like, why I love emerging manager world so much is because you're creating the systems and the processes and the tech enablement that will allow you to scale, right? To be here for the next decade or longer, right? Um, we're a 3-person fund, and we processed easily over 1,200, 1,300 deals, and that's like that we processed, right? Reviewed probably more. So I mean, I can get into like internal VC operating system world, or if you want me to stick more in the inbounding, but
Um, I would just give you like my personal opinion on the
yeah,
inbound versus outbound. I think like the investment that I've made, like I primarily would trust my outbounds a little bit
yeah,
more because I feel like I have to identify like initially identify this is like a really good sector, really good deal, really good company. So like
Okay.
it saves me a lot of time to figure out if this is a good company. So I already figure out this is a good company. So I like put my money in, right? So like
Yeah.
so I feel like the outbound part is like a little bit more effective. However, when you like if you don't really have a brand, if you don't really have like any track record beforehand, especially like if you're an angel investor or if you're like a student and you want to like get to know the founder, what would be like an effective way for the founder to actually spend time with you and actually share like what's going on?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if you're an investor, it's easier, right? Like, hey, I can invest.
I I I actually
But if
don't.
you're
I think as an investor, there's like two parts, right? Like one part is like some people maybe like already built a brand for themselves. It's a lot easier. Let's say Sergio, or like
I
if
hear what you're
Sergio
saying.
is investing in like a ad tech space, but let's say if it's like a person that like they may not have like a deep pocket like track record or like
Yeah.
name branded firm
Yeah.
experience, like it's really hard for them to be like, okay, let me get into the quality deals, right? So like I
Yeah.
wonder
No,
what
for
would be the
sure.
process of like selling yourself to the founder.
Yeah. It's huge. I mean, um, I do think getting really good at outbounding is like one of the ninja skills, right? Because in venture, that's where value creation happens, right? It's like a fund is only as good as the companies it brings in. And this is why, like, connecting earlier to our discussion on being thesis driven and thematic is so important because you know where to look, right? Like, instead of having to boil the whole ocean, you're like, hey, I want to play in those two, three, four little lakes, right? Because I know there's little unicorns in there hanging out and a lot of potential. So, in terms of the outbounding, how you reach out, like, I just try to create value, right? Like, and if I'm doing it through Roble, right, it's like, hey, I saw you're building X, Y, and Z. I really like what you're building, right? Like I've been researching this area and see why you're going with that product. I'd love to see if we can connect and learn more. And sometimes it's not always about like, oh, I need to invest or like, about the money. Sometimes it's just about like, is there any other way I can help? Something that was really helpful. It's just like always try to create value for people, right? Something I've learned from Sergio and just throughout my career, right? Like always just try to create value for people. So with a founder, that could be you can invest or you can connect them to someone that can help, maybe a potential customer. Um, but as an investor, my pitch is kind of forward, right? We invest in future of work, future of learning. We invest 200,000 to 2 million, and we are thesis driven. So we really like in particular what you're building, and then we end up having really amazing discussions because when they start telling me like their business and their vision and whatnot, we can really relate to it because we've also been back to the week one researching and reading and thinking and talking to experts, and so that just creates a really, I think, genuine connection, like a good, strong connection with the founder. And yeah, so that's that has worked. Yeah.
I also wonder, let's say like in the space of like, let's say the 30 founders, I personally would not just talk to like the founders that I'm like only like the people that I'm interested in. Like it's also like the broadcast of like ecosystem players, right? Like so the people who are like maybe a couple steps ahead of what you would kind of invest in, because essentially you have to know what's great look like before you invest in something. So I wonder if you're trying to reach out to the people who are in like a more later stage of their
Mhm.
um than like a startup career, like what would be the um approach to actually get them into the conversation and then share the things with you?
Yeah. And when you say later stage, like they're like later, like growth,
Let's say
like
if I want
Series
to
B,
invest
Series
in
B. Yeah.
well, let's say if I want to invest in like the future version of Stripe, but right now I
Okay.
want to chat with the people on the Stripe team to give me like some insights about what they're looking at in terms of investing in this sector, or like the innovation gap that I may not be aware of. So
Yeah.
what would be the process of like chatting with, let's say, the right person at like a bigger, more later stage company?
Yeah. With Stripe. Oh, okay. Like someone that's working at the incumbent.
Yeah.
Oh
So incumbent or like so like what as a 30 founder you have in mind? Was that like all 30 founders who are building in the very early stage, or what were you talking about like just like basically your exact potential investments, or were
yeah.
would you be chatting with like people who are more like later on too?
Yeah. Look, yeah, that's a great question. The way I see it, Grace, you're trying to understand the forest, right? There's a time when you're going to go in and see every single tree, and that's going to be like companies. But right now, you're just trying to understand the market, right? So part of that is connecting with everyone, right? It could be, let's just take like Stripe, right? Or Salesforce, right? Like you want to figure out who's going to be the
Mhm.
next startup that kills this incumbent, right? Because that's a huge, huge multi-billion dollar opportunity. Um, you got to talk to folks, at the incumbents. You got to talk to folks at the growth stage level, like Series B, Series C, Series D, pre-IPO, or maybe they're like getting, M&A targets. You got to talk to folks at early stage, seed, Series A. You got to talk to folks that are operators at these companies and know intimately like the good, the bad, and the ugly. You got to read everything you can. So
Question on the let's talk about like chat with like M&A targets or like operators or something. Like what would be the question you ask to like kind of like get the whole picture?
yeah, and they're operators at the incumbents.
Yeah, like operators or like you mentioned like talking to like M&A targets, like who exactly would it be like you're talking to, let's say, the Google Corp Dev team, or like would it be you're talking to let's say like I don't know, like what does a M&A
Yeah,
target mean?
yeah. The people I love to talk to are the builders and the sellers, right? The builders are building the product. They know, like any software engineer, any product
Mhm.
manager knows like the good, the bad, and the ugly intimately of the product. Sometimes even better than the CEOs. So I'd want to talk to them. I'd want to talk to folks on the go-to-market side, whether it's like sales, could be an account executive, could be a BDR, business development rep, could be a marketer, could be a customer success. Actually, customer success people, I think, are some of the most knowledgeable people at companies. Like a big shout out to my last company's customer success team because they were just like, if you wanted to know anything about the state of the business, you talk to customer success. So, right, because they're forced with looking at the customer and saying like, hey, are we gonna, like upsell? Are you we're gonna renew? Them and sometimes the AEs are the ones leading the difficult conversations on the value being created. So, yeah, that's what I talk to. And then at the C-suite, the last 2 years, 3 years, because of the macro economy, there was a lot of pressure on financial efficiency and returns, right? So, like the CFO grew way stronger in influence in the boardroom, right? So
Mhm.
everything was more ROI driven. How is this going to impact my bottom line? And so, yeah, you want to hear what they're saying, right? Like,
Mhm.
what is the mindset of a CFO? What's the mindset of the folks that are signing the contract and saying like, yeah, we're gonna go with David and Grace's quantum company, right?
Mm, so basically everybody. So like I think we're talking about like let's say like the 4 week one is like research paper, talk looking at the scientific report, looking at the public market and data. Like what exactly where would you find the most like relevant and accurate data about like a company's financial health? Like, and then if you're thinking about quantum computing, what exactly would be the benchmark that you're using? Is that like going to be like the Tesla of the world, or like
Yeah,
what would be the
yeah,
benchmark there?
yeah, yeah. Well, where do you find financial information for companies? It depends. If they're private or if they're public. If they're public companies, meaning they're like, on a stock like New York Stock Exchange or the Dow or whatever public company where you can buy and trade their stock, then all of their financial information is going to be publicly available, right? Their 10Ks, all these, 50, sometimes even longer documents detailing very intimately like the state of the business, right? And so,
So
um,
where I guess like since like the pages of these documents would be like super long, where would you focus your energy on?
yeah. Well, I mean, at the beginning, they have like an executive summary, like an overview. So I think always that. I'd want to look at like the income statement. I want to look at like how are they growing in terms of revenue over time, but then also how are they growing in terms of efficiency and how much they get to keep that revenue, right? Like the margins improving. Because what you want, right? You want to invest in a company that over time can grow consistently in revenues, right? And then is able to become more efficient and keep more of that, right? That's more cash that you have and more a bigger valuation that you can command. So that's sort of the North Star. And so back to the question on what would I look at? I would look at like the financial statements. I would look at their like what they see as the table stakes of winning their industry, right? Like some of the SKs, a lot of the SKs or these earnings reports or earnings calls with the CEOs and all the investors, they'll say like, "Hey, we need to focus on X, Y, and Z," right? Like the joke was that like all of them started talking about AI and the need to really build and win on AI, or else competitors were gonna do it. So it gives you a really good understanding of not only the internal mindset of what is top of mind for that company, but also how they're allocating their capital, right, to get there.
Mm.
Uh,
Let's say for the earning calls, like would you listen to the whole thing?
um, Snippets, like, yeah, what I need to know. Well, yeah, and then it wouldn't be for like all companies, right? It would just be companies that I'm interested in because I'm investing in the earlier versions of them,
Um,
or a
okay.
company like in their industry. Yeah.
I guess like let's say if we have like 7 days, what would be the information diet quickly? So basically, we're reading let's say 50 to 100 research paper about their abstract section, their conclusion, and
Yeah.
the earning reports. We will listen to the snippet of these like earning calls.
Yeah. Yeah, and let me just like clarify, like the whole point of step one, the research, is not just to be like an academic and just do a bunch of research. It's really trying to like look through all the different sources of information to really form a little personal thesis, right? So um, like I'd want to look at like the public companies and what they're investing and what they're prioritizing, but you want to kind of get to you want to get to the founders as quickly as you can, right? You want to get to the point where you can, if you've given 100 founders
Mhm,
in that space, how do you differentiate against, like, how do you pick the top 5, top 10, right?
mhm,
So I want to do enough research to be able to answer like, okay, that founder's thinking really good, really well about the product and how they're building a product that is like really needed, and all the incumbents are like really struggling, and you're hearing that from customers. Um, you're thinking like that founder's really being thoughtful about not only like their first product, but the next 2 or 3 or 4, because over time they really want to challenge the incumbent. They really want to be like a big one of the biggest players in that space. Um, so yeah, you're doing a research to answer that question.
okay, this is very helpful. And then, okay, so let's talk about like the founders. So you would talk to people, just basically, essentially anyone who works in the either bigger company or like the industry related companies. Um, so let's call it like if you want to meet the founder, what would your research process look like to find the founders who are building in the category and the founders are actually worth your time to chat with? Besides, like if we're, I feel like if you're looking at AI companies, there's like 500 YC companies that are building in the area. But if they're in like a more newer, nichier category, what would be your approach to actually find the company that's like worth your time?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, hunting the highest potential talent, like basically, right? So um, For me, I do a lot of things. One of them will be like I connect with other investors who invest in areas that I care about, and maybe they're like angel investors, so they're like one stage before us. We're seed, and over time they're like, hey, we really like this company. They'll forward those companies. I leverage tools like PitchBook a lot, for example, to make a search and look at for all the potential universe of companies that are being started in our stage, right? Maybe they got some angel funding, business productivity, SaaS, marketplace. Like you can sort of signify what you're looking for, and then you get a list of all these companies, and you have perfect information. Well, not perfect information, but you have enough information on the founders and their LinkedIn's and their websites and their descriptions to kind of know. Make a decision whether you should reach out or not. That's been a huge source. Thought leadership has been helped a lot. A big shout out to Emily on our team, and Sergio, who are really good at this. Definitely, and you're amazing at this, Grace. I'm like trying to figure out this stuff. But it's like you're sort of trying to get your thinking out there so that you can just connect with people who also share that thinking, right? And are building companies in that space. But yeah, those are a few areas I would start. Really good accelerators as well, right? Like your YCs, your Techstars, university ecosystems.
Mhm.
Like 2 weeks ago, I went with Roble to Harvard and reconnected with the iLab at Harvard, and just all these young, almost stealth mode founders that are working on companies, and they're about to raise like their first check, or they're about to get their first customer. So it's like all these little sources that where you can find really good talent.
Um, I guess like when you are thinking about finding the talent, I guess like would you find the most like technical talent first and then evaluating their sales skill, or vice versa? Or like I guess how would you identify great talent? Because we're talking about like someone building in like a particular niche, right? If we're talking about like a company that's like building, let's say, the future of work, like obviously that's like a sector that both of us like focus on. Like there will be trillions of company coming out of that category. But if we're focusing on like quantum computing, maybe there's like only 5 people that are building in the space that's
Yeah,
visible.
yeah,
um like I'm sure like having the access to, let's say, like a Harvard lab or something, it will be helpful. But in general, what would be your approach to spot the talent
yeah,
in a very stealth mode? And if I go to, let's say, like a Harvard lab, maybe there's like only 2 people that's building in that particular area, and then the rest are building an AI or something that's like popular that year. Like what would be the kind of thought process on actually having enough deal flow in that category?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, how I would evaluate, how I would look for the companies, right? And I don't think like I think the strongest venture investors will be those that can look at both traditional sources of great founders, like your Stanfords or your Harvards, and but also look at like non-traditional sources of founders, right? Because there's like this country has so much talent when it comes to entrepreneurship, and probably the most infrastructure in the world for growing and scaling. Like there's no country in the world better to start a company than the US. And so I would look at, like, for example, we're involved in some other organizations like Somos VC, La Familia, these other organizations that are just looking for like different pockets of founders, right?
Mhm.
Like our mission is to connect with the highest potential founders, regardless of their background, right? That are building products that can really enable people to be the best version of themselves, right? Through work and through learning. Um, in terms of what we look for in terms of founders, I think I touched on it a little bit, like the ability to build and ability to sell. I'm happy to dive deeper if it helps. But yeah, I think in terms of abounding and sourcing, you just have to be really creative and like take a step back and look at the whole ecosystem and try to figure out what are the top 10 sources of talent some that are traditional and some that are not.
Mm. Okay, I want to be mindful of the time. So, okay, let's jump into a quick fire round for the
All
audience.
right, cool.
Okay, what's your favorite book
Um, ever.
ever?
The one that's been the most helpful is Naval Ravikant's Almanac. A friend from business school, Chinadu, sent it to me, and it's guided a lot of my thinking.
Uh, who would you invite to your dinner party?
Oof. I would love to just hang out with Barack Obama. That's the best
I think you already
childhood.
hung out with him before, right? In your internship or
He just
something?
dapped me up and he said, "What's up, man?" And that's it. Yeah, but like
Uh,
just yeah, like have a really gets to just like have a good discussion. There's so many things I'd want to ask him.
uh, who would who made the biggest impact in your career?
A high school counselor named Mr. Andres Acosta. You know, I didn't know when I was growing up, my going into high school, my goal was to go to community college because that was like what the most successful people I knew did. But Mr. Costa created a program that took folks going from junior high, eighth grade to high school that had the potential to, go to college or four-year universities, but weren't on that track. And so he created a program with the district that you did summer school for 2 months, took like a math test and an English test, and then if you passed, you were bumped up to the AP, like the honors, like advanced curriculum track. And that little decision by a high school counselor changed the course of my life for sure. So big
Wow.
shout out to Mr. Acosta.
Shout out to him so we could go to the same school.
Yeah.
But anyway, okay, so where can we find you outside of work?
Outside of work, Austin's Ladybird Lake, running on the trail, hang out with my dog Gringo, hang out with my family, friends, or Champaign, Illinois, where you and I met,
Okay,
watching some basketball.
amazing. Wow, David, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Appreciate you, Grace, and kudos for everything you've done. I've known you since college, and I'm so proud of to call you my friend.